From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight, London court throws out Nigeria's $1 billion suit against Royal Dutch Shell and Eni oil giants over lack of jurisdiction. Lagos State begins a process of reopening state economy in motion with the rollout of register to open guidelines. More controversy over lifting of ban on religious gatherings across the country as clerics hold divergent views ahead of Eid al-Fitr celebrations. President Muhammadu Buhari signs executive bill granting financial autonomy to judiciary and legislature. And US President Donald Trump calls on places of worship to open right now, categorizing them as essential. Plus business news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, 36 states of the Federation and the FCT recorded 20.92% growth in internally generated revenue in 2019.
On sports news, Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka becomes the highest paid female athlete in history after earning £30.7 million last year.
And from Abuja, China's Civil Engineering Construction Corporation clears the air on whereabouts of Chinese health workers. The company says they did not treat any Nigerian COVID-19 patient.
We begin in the United Kingdom, where Nigeria has suffered a setback in its $1 billion suit against international oil giants Shell and Eni over the controversial OPL 245 or Malibu oil deal, as a court in London has ruled that the case cannot proceed. The High Court Judge Christopher Butcher is reported to have held that the court does not have jurisdiction to hear the matter, which has a parallel proceeding in Italy, also brought by the Nigerian government over the Malibu deal. This was what formed the basis on which Shell and Eni had moved to stop or stay proceedings in the $1 billion suit in the UK during the virtual hearings of the case last month. They argue that the case in the UK court was a duplication of the ongoing criminal trial and parallel civil claim brought by Nigeria in Italy over the same matter. Nigeria had sued Shell and Eni for $1.1 billion in 2011, involving licensing of OML 245, which the nation claims the said companies made her miss a result of bribes they paid to Malibu Oil, owned by former Minister of Petroleum Dan Etete. However, the federal government will be seeking permission to appeal the decision of the UK court declining jurisdiction in Nigeria's $1 billion suit against oil giants Royal Dutch Shell and Eni. That's according to a statement received by Channels Television's London correspondent Juliana Olayinka from the representatives of the federal government in the UK. The statement conveys the government's disappointment in the court declining jurisdiction over its civil claim against Shell, Eni and EVP on a point of law relating to Article 29 of the relevant Brussels regulations. While expressing intent to appeal the decision, the statement adds that the federal government is confident that Shell, Eni and EVP will be held to account for their actions regarding the fraudulent and corrupt scheme. It says the case in England against JP Morgan concerning its role as the Federal Republic of Nigeria's bank in the OPL 245 deal will continue. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari will be conducting his Eid prayers with his family at home. He will not be receiving homages during the Eid al-Fitr festival. That's according to his senior special assistant on media and publicity, Mr. Garba Shehu, who says that this is in observance of the lockdown measures in the FCT. The Sultan of Sokoto and President General of the Jama'atu Nasril Islam, Alhaji Saad Abubakar III, had suspended Eid congregational prayers across the country, as well as the protocol against mass gathering issued by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Staying with the celebrations ahead, the Sultan of Sokoto and President General, Nigeria's Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, Muhammad Sayyad Abubakar, declared Sunday, May 24th, as the first day of this year's Eid al-Fitr. This is announced in a statement signed by the Chairman, Advisory Committee on Religious Affairs, Sultanate Council, Sambo Junaidu. According to the statement, the National Moon Sighting Committee did not receive any report from the various committees across the country confirming the sighting of the new moon of Shawwal today. The Sultan consequently declared Saturday, May 23rd, as the 30th day of the month of Ramadan. He asked all Muslims to continue to pray for peace, progress and development of the country, while wishing them happy Eid al-Fitr and Allah's guidance and blessings. And as the Muslim faithful wind down the Ramadan fast, some state governments are easing restrictions on religious gatherings earlier imposed to curb the spread of COVID-19. This has not gone down well with some religious leaders in Kaduna who are asking the state government not to ease restrictions on places of worship. However, some Muslim leaders in the southwest are urging state governments to open up mosques to allow Eid prayers, promising to ensure strict enforcement of COVID-19 guidelines.
Mosques, churches, markets, schools and other public places in Kaduna State have been closed for almost 2 months due to the coronavirus pandemic. And it's not clear when the government will change its directive for their reopening, especially for places of worship. While the lockdown no doubt has brought some untold hardship to most people, religious leaders say followers of the different faiths may have to endure long-term changes to their mode of worship to prevent further the spread of the coronavirus.
It is very difficult for any religious leader, if we will be true to ourselves, to control our large membership in maintaining the simple hygiene, even in churches.
A prominent Islamic cleric, Sheikh Ahmed Gumi, seems to be on the same page, advising the Kaduna State government not to ease restrictions on places of worship, especially mosques, which would have held services to mark the end of the holy month of Ramadan this weekend.
Once you allow people to come out, then they are going to troop out in thousands you cannot control. And the point is, we have stayed for 2 months on lockdown. We are afraid that one single day will come and spoil all the gains we have.
Meanwhile, in the southwest, it's a different call for some Muslim leaders who seem eager to see a reopening of mosques across the country to allow Eid al-Fitr prayers and are promising adherence to the guidelines.
We are just appealing to all governors to meet together to give us chance to reopen mosque and church, to pray for our land.
The leaders may differ in their positions, but the government is already asking Nigerians to start adjusting to a new way of doing things when the restrictions are eventually lifted. Physical distancing, wearing of masks, washing of hands, gathering in small groups or no gatherings at all to help prevent the spread of the virus.
On the other hand, the Muslim faithful in Benue State may not be so restricted, as Governor Samuel Ortom has announced the lifting of the ban on places of worship and economic activities provided they conform to the COVID-19 safety protocols. The governor made the announcement after he received a sample of ventilators invented by engineers at the Federal University of Agriculture in Makurdi, the state capital. The devices were developed as part of homegrown solutions to support efforts at managing COVID-19 patients.
We recommend strongly that there must be staggered services in churches and in mosques. And the standard of maintaining 2-meter social distancing must be observed. The wearing of face masks must be observed. The washing of hands with soap must be observed. The using of hand sanitizer must be observed. And keeping our environment neat, possible fumigation of churches and mosques must be done once in a while.
The current ease of lockdown in Ogun State has been extended by a week, with the window of relaxation on Monday, Wednesday and Friday between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. each day until May 31st. This was announced today by Governor Dapo Abiodun during a press conference at his office in Abeokuta, the state capital. The governor explained that the second phase of the relaxation is to commence on June 1st.
After all considerations, we are constrained to take the painful but necessary decision to continue the eased lockdown of Ogun State for another 1 week till Sunday 31st, May 2020. As we always maintained, the delicate balance between life and livelihood, we will continue to have a window of relaxation from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Monday 25th May 2020, Wednesday 27th May, and Friday 29th May 2020. We must also bear in mind that the daily curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. and the ban on non-essential interstate travel, as directed by Mr. President, still stands. The current phase of the ease of lockdown will terminate on 31st May. The second phase will commence on 1st of June. This will be accompanied with a further ease of lockdown and expansion of relaxation windows.
And in Kogi State, Governor Yahaya Bello says the state is lucky to not have recorded any case of the coronavirus, and he wants the zero status maintained. The governor, who spoke during an enlightenment program, asked residents to maintain personal hygiene and adhere to the directives given by the NCDC to prevent an outbreak of the virus.
SARS-CoV-2.
This may not be the best of arrangements for participants at the two-day sensitization program for leaders of interest groups and agencies on the coronavirus pandemic in Kogi State.
So there are channels for distributing virus.
Basic preventive measures like the use of face masks and physical distancing are hardly observed at an event organized by the state government to educate residents about the virus. Despite the increase in COVID-19 cases across the country and Kogi State without a confirmed case of COVID-19, according to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Governor Bello is leaving nothing to chance in ensuring that Kogi State remains free of the disease.
I know now that our people are maintaining and living hygienically. They eat healthy, they exercise. In fact, I double my daily exercise so that I serve as an example for the citizens of Kogi State to be exercising. But we need to enlighten ourselves more. Let it not be my problem alone.
Here is Professor Otoikan.
One of the guest speakers, a professor of virology and genetics, shares his findings and recommendations on how best to manage the disease should it emerge.
You discover that those symptoms are not just symptoms you get yourself worried about, because man has been living with those symptoms every day. World Health Organization has given us a hope, and that hope is that we should be prepared to live with it, because there is no possibility that it will go.
An advice from a religious leader is that people should embrace the use of vaccine whenever it is made available for the virus.
They didn't lock down anywhere for measles. What do you do in measles? Start with the first line of treatment. When they develop fever, treat the fever. If it doesn't go, treat for malaria. If it doesn't go, add antibiotics. Treat the symptoms that you see. These things will go.
For now, Kogi State insists it is coronavirus-free, even though tests have not been conducted by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control to confirm this. But residents still need to be informed about the virus before it manifests.
In part two after the break, we take a closer look at the latest forecast of a possible recession in Nigeria by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. We'll be joined on the news at 10 by an economist with SBM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. Stay with us. Welcome back. If it has joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. London court throws out Nigeria's $1 billion suit against Royal Dutch Shell and ENI oil giants over lack of jurisdiction. Lagos State Government begins process of reopening state economy with the rollout of register to open guidelines. More controversy over lifting of ban on religious gatherings across the country as clerics hold divergent views ahead of Eid al-Fitr celebrations. President Muhammadu Buhari signs executive bill granting financial autonomy to judiciary and legislature. And US President Donald Trump calls on places of worship to open right now, categorizing them as essential. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. There are fears of the continuous increase in the number of internally displaced people's camps in Katsina State could jeopardize its fight against COVID-19. The worry is about community transmission since no one enforces social distancing in the camps. But the state government is promising to cater to the welfare of the people, particularly the new entries.
All over the world now, never a day passes without the mention of COVID-19 disease. The number of confirmed cases keeps rising, so is the number of deaths. The figure in Nigeria has risen to over 7,000, and no hope it will decline soon. Lagos and Kano states, the Federal Capital Territory and Katsina are the four highest. As if that is not a big enough fish to fry, Katsina also grapples with the challenge of displacement of its citizens. This is due to the activities of bandits and kidnappers. At the last count, more than 13,000 people are living in the IDP camps across the 9 local government areas of the state. These people here are a new batch, having been here for the past 3 weeks.
We don't even know for how long they are going to stay here. We've contacted SEMA. They came, they conduct the head count and other things, and they promised to come and in fact, move them to a safer place because as you can see here, they are just on the road, no toilets, nothing, and this is where they eat themselves and everything they want to do this. They sleep here.
There are promises by the state emergency managers to cater to their needs.
We took their data and we supplied some food items to them. That includes rice, beans, millet, spaghetti, macaroni, so that at least they will have food on a daily basis.
Just how easy will stopping community transmission of COVID-19 be in the northwest state that has recorded 13 deaths already?
We are all aware of the situation we are in here in terms of COVID-19. So those that are symptomatic, we are going to screen them and triage and make sure that we do the needful in terms of their health needs.
Earlier in May, Governor Aminu Masari lamented what he described as a double disaster in the state. That's talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and banditry. Addressing the security situation in the state may be an indirect way of fighting the pandemic in the state that has recorded over 300 cases of COVID-19 already.
Here in Lagos, the state government has set in motion the process of reopening its economy with the rollout of Register to Open guidelines. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu announced that the state government daily battles the reality of balancing reactivation of economic activities and the continuation of state's response to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. The governor was speaking at a webinar organized by First Securities Discount House Group that featured governors of Kaduna and Edo states, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, Godwin Obaseki, and about 1,200 people that participated from across the globe. He says the battle to stop the ravaging virus in Lagos had subjected the state to a delicate situation of having to manage hunger resulting from weeks of slowdown in economic activities. The state government had also offered incentives that would affect its internally generated revenue in order to prevent job loss in critical industries that provide employment for a large number of workers. Linda Kigbe standing by in Abuja for more on the news at 10. Hi, Linda. Always great to see you.
Hello, Amarachi. Welcome to Abuja. It's becoming increasingly likely that Nigeria will experience another recession. This is because the nation is recording a twin shock of the COVID-19 pandemic, an economic downturn which is gradually affecting every sector of the economy. The finance minister says the GDP might shrink by an average of 4.4%. Our next report examines the economic implications of a possible recession in Nigeria and the global economy.
In Nigeria, that is the GDP, could, in the worst case scenario, contract by as much as minus 8.94% in 2020.
That projection from the finance minister did not come as a surprise for many economic watchers. The sudden arrival of COVID-19 has already put the global economy on a tailspin, leading to a projection of a fall into recession later this year. The IMF's World Economic Outlook for 2020 projects global economy will decline by 3% this year on a baseline scenario if the pandemic fades in the second half of the year. The body also projected minus 1.6% growth for sub-Saharan Africa and minus 3.4% for Nigeria in particular, but that could even be more.
When I put figures projected for GDP for each of those 4 quarters of this year, I came up with a figure of 98.63 trillion naira. That's a huge dampening from 145 in 2019. And when I put figures to it, that's about 32.28% dampening of this economy. That is what I'm looking at as of today.
An economy can be said to be in recession when it records 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. Nigeria grew by 2.29% in 2019, the highest growth rate since the 2016 recession. All eyes are on the first quarter GDP expected to be released next week, and economic analysts expect to see a drop in growth rate.
Clearly, I think for the first quarter of this year, we don't expect GDP numbers to be anywhere close to 2%. I think that is really, if we get to 1.5%, we're very lucky. We might actually be negative for all you know, but clearly the numbers are not going to be anywhere close to 2%. And it is clear that by the end of the year, we're going to be in a recession and our economy will contract by at least 3.5% from what predictions are.
The FDC economic think tank projects that if the worst happens, economic contraction will get to minus 8%, with economic disruption becoming unbearable. Current and forward indicators confirm that 2020 and 2021 will be the toughest year in decades. Inflation rates will spike, while exchange rate adjustments will increase imports costs, among others. How well the government responds will determine if the economy will see a U, W, or V recovery.
Now to the northwest, where health workers in Kaduna State have declared a 7-day warning strike over the deduction of 25% of their April and May salaries as contribution to the management of the coronavirus pandemic. Their unions are also demanding for the inclusion of all health workers in the hazard allowance package of the state government, as well as providing them with adequate personnel protective equipment. The Kaduna State Chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association, Dr. Stephen Kache, who addressed reporters on behalf of the joint unions, described the deduction of healthcare workers' salaries as illegal.
25% of the salaries of healthcare workers that were deducted in the month of April. Another 25% deduction has also been effected in the month of May for all healthcare workers in Kaduna State. This is unacceptable and is insensitive to the needs of the healthcare workers in Kaduna State. The government does not reverse this order and does not meet the demands of the healthcare workers. All the healthcare workers unions in Kaduna have agreed that we're going to proceed on a 7-day warning strike.
Our appeal is that at this time of this pandemic, it's not the time for us to have rancor, but to pull ranks and to see how we deal with this very new and dangerous disease that we have all found ourselves confronting. Nobody knows where this will start. This will end, and we are hoping that they will listen to the voice of reason and come together so that we confront this pandemic as we should.
When the News at 10 returns, we'll have a discussion on the state of the country's economy, plus more updates on COVID-19. Plus, 30 states and the Federal Capital Territory generates 20.92% growth in internally generated revenue in 2019. That's in Business News. Join us again. You're welcome back to the News at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. Now, joining us to examine the implications of a recession for Nigeria's economy is an economist with SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. Mr. Alaje, you're welcome to the News at 10.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So, it appears as if, not appears, it's now almost fact that a recession is in the horizon for the world, and Nigeria is not immune from this. But we've seen in the last 2 weeks an increase in oil prices, and it doesn't appear as if Nigeria will be going for a total lockdown like other countries. So I want to know, how bad can this recession be for Nigeria when compared to that of 2016?
Now, the recession will be more than what we have in 2016, because this is not caused by finance, not by financial implication. The cause of this is both demand and supply shocks, which of course affected all sectors. Now, what you see is that banking sector, for instance, the top tier 5 banks in Nigeria are badly affected because most of the facility, about 30% of loans given to them have been given to oil sector. And you have 24% of that is non-performing. So you're going to have a sporadic effect of the recession affects from education. Schools are shut down. Private schools that would have added to the GDP are unable to complete their second term, third term. It's not done. You have religious organizations that work between 1 to 2 trillion naira across board when you combine what they have and the activity that happen in the religious sector, even though it might not be formal. So when you look at our non-oil sector, is badly affected. Oil sector is affected. A number of companies had not remitted VAT because truly in April, no so much of business activity happened. And that will, of course, extend. And what we should understand is the coming recession will be high. The projection is going to be between -1% to -4%. IMF is saying -3.4%. Federal government is looking like at something lower than 2%. But for us, we are looking at -1% to -4%. But something is certain, with all projections, all economists and organizations have had, is that we are certainly going to have a recession in 2020.
Now, in your opinion, which sectors do you think will be worst hit by this recession?
Of course, the sector that has the immediate hit is oil and gas. And that will, of course, extend to education, it will extend to agriculture. You will not really have the most hit, because this recession is not just supply side or demand side, it's both effect. So it's going to affect almost everybody. And you saw when that started, banks, there were rumors that banks have started sacking people before central bank intervened. That does not mean bank now have more activities. You could see the number of days bank at work, even within ease of lockdown because of the pandemic. So we are going to see more of that, and many organizations will retrench people. There is no particular sector, but what I can tell you is oil sector will be mostly affected because of demand, which of course it has started increasing. But when you see the number that you have having, approximately $30 plus minus 10% of $30 per barrel, but even at that, what we have is cost of production in Nigeria is relatively high. So what will be shared among the joint venture and Nigeria, the three tiers of government, is still significantly low. And that is why perhaps Minister of Finance and the executive had reviewed for the second time the 2020 budget. But will there be sufficient fund for Nigeria to spend? I doubt it.
So speaking of the intervention of the CBN and in extension the federal government, what do you think about the key stimulus packages that have been put in place? Do you think it will be able to cushion the effect of the recession?
Now, I think so, but the first stimulus package government can give to reduce the impact of recession is to reopen the economy. Because you may not have so much if you want to keep people locked down or partially locked down. Your economy is already affected. The Minister of Finance already muted the idea of recession, even with the pandemic. So we need to look for alternatives. Other countries that we copied for lockdown, it is not bad that we locked down at first, but it will now be back if we further delay without reopening the economy this moment today. So, but there are a lot we can do. We can do fiscal stimulus. We can do monetary. Central Bank has come up with 50 billion naira. I think we need to do more. And also for fiscal policy, I think government, rather than reducing salary of workers, which of course make demand from most of the people that are in the informal sector, that are mostly affected, I think government should look at office holders, public office holders, rather than looking at civil servants. That is what we need to focus on. And of course, we need to encourage manufacturing. Manufacturing will be badly affected in the coming period, but we need to, of course, support them so that we can have more jobs. We don't have a lot of job losses. Unemployment is more even important to me than what GDP will say. Unemployment may be as high as 40% by the end of this year. How do we protect it? Is to protect manufacturing and agriculture. Then we can say the impact will not be much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alaje, for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks a lot, Linda. The leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria has felicitated with the Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence Alhaji Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, and all Nigerian Muslim faithful on their successful completion of this year's Ramadan. In a statement, CAN Secretary General Joseph Daramola asked the Muslim faithful to continuously pray for the peace, unity, and stability of Nigeria. The Christian Umbrella Group also encourages Muslims in Nigeria and all over the world to continue to pray for a speedy end to COVID-19 in the country, the continent in the entire world, a cause to which CAN is also fully committed. CAN also commends Nigerians for their cooperation with the governments in their attempts to curtail the spread of the coronavirus while praying for the recovery of all patients who are sick from the pandemic. After several questions about the whereabouts and mission of the Chinese medical experts in Nigeria, the host company, the China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, has emphasized that the team has not been treating COVID-19 patients. In a statement released today via Twitter, the construction company said the team has been carrying out its assigned mission in Nigeria, but the mandate does not cover treating COVID-19 patients. According to the company, the team has assisted in setting up isolation centers and provided support to CCECC staff on how to guard against COVID-19. The statement adds that the medical experts are willing and ready to share their experiences from fighting COVID-19 in China with Nigerian health officials. The Chinese firm further explains that the medical personnel are in the country at the instance of CCECC Nigeria and have been under its care and accommodation. The President today signed into law Executive Order number 10 of 2020 for the implementation of financial autonomy of state legislature and state judiciary. This is contained in a statement from the Special Assistant on Media and Public Relations Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, Umar Gwandu. According to the statement, the implementation of financial autonomy of the state legislature and state judiciary will strengthen institutions at the state tier of government and make them more independent and accountable. The order authorizes the Accountants General of the Federation to deduct from source in the course of Federation accounts allocations from money allocated to any state that fails to release allocation meant for the state legislature and the judiciary. The Nigeria Customs Service says it has made a massive seizure of drugs suspected to be cannabis sativa worth over 1 billion naira. According to the service, this is the largest single seizure of hard drugs ever recorded by its officials on the high sea. In a statement, the Comptroller of Customs, Western Marine Command in Lagos, Oluboyega Peters, explains that the interception by operatives of the command is based on intelligence. The drugs were suspected to be coming in from Ghana and had crossed many borders by water before the seizure in Lagos. Business News is next. Here's BC Adebayo.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Welcome to Business News. A total of 1.33 trillion naira revenue was generated internally by the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT in 2019, compared to 1.17 trillion naira recorded in 2018. This is according to a latest report on IDR at state level for the fourth quarter and full year 2019, released by the National Bureau of Statistics today. The positive growth of 20.92% year-on-year shows that Lagos State has the highest internally generated revenue with 398.73 billion naira recorded, closely followed by Rivers with 140.4 billion naira, while Taraba State recorded the least internally generated revenue. In company news now, frontline industrial giant Dangote Cement has released its first quarter for the period ended March 31st, 2020. According to the latest financial statement sent to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the cement maker's revenue grew by 3.8% to 249.18 billion naira compared to 240.15 billion naira posted in the second quarter of 2019. At the same time, the company's gross profit rose by 3% to 144.85 billion naira. Pre-tax profit was higher by 11.5% at 88.05 billion naira, while net profit was up by 0.6%. Meanwhile, the company's board says it has obtained approval from the Securities and Exchange Commission for its planned share buyback program. The Nigerian equities market ended the week with a 1.80% increase in the all-share index. Teniola Shobawale tells us more about today's trading activities.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. The stock market's main index crossed back to the 25,000 level at the close of today's trading after climbing by a stronger 1.80% margin while maintaining its gain for a fifth consecutive day this week. Similarly, equity capitalization climbed by 233 billion naira to regain the 13 trillion naira mark, largely due to significant increases on some listed high-value equity share price. Friday's activity was also characterized by investors' strong interest for key stocks across the 5 key sectors of the market. In particular, the shares of Bua Cement after the company reported stellar performance in its full year 2019 results, while the shares of MTN Nigeria added much support to the higher value. Double One, formerly known as Mobil, tops a list of 28 gainers with a 10% increase on its share price. Cavitin is top out of 16 losers after a 10% loss, while the shares of UBA, Zenith Bank and FBN Holdings are lead contributors to nearly 260 million shares traded today. That's it on the Stock Market Report. I'm Layo Adegoke.
That was Layo Adekoke there. Meanwhile, global equities markets edged lower today as Beijing moved to impose a new security law on Hong Kong after last year's pro-democracy unrest. Let's take a look at today's numbers. And that's it on Business News. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Bissy. Still ahead on the news at 10, U.S. President Donald Trump calls on places of worship to open right now, categorizing them as essential. We have this and more from our London studio in Around the World in 5. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump has called on state governors to allow the reopening of places of worship which have been closed due to the coronavirus, warning that he will override governors who do not do so. President Donald Trump says he is declaring that places of worship, churches, synagogues and mosques are providing essential services, and this should be opened as soon as possible. Here's Simon Pusey now with more international news and Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London for your international news around the world in 5. China has unveiled plans for new national security legislation for Hong Kong at the start of its annual parliamentary session that also revealed the immense economic challenges caused by coronavirus. The law would prohibit treason, secession, sedition and subversion in Hong Kong against the Chinese government. The proposal has been condemned by the United States and Hong Kong pro-democracy figures as an assault on the city's freedoms.
One of the central principles of the rule of law is that everyone is equal. No one is above the law. Not even the chief executive is above the law. Are they saying that there will be a commission or an organization in Hong Kong that is above the law? Then that will be the end of Hong Kong.
A Pakistan International Airlines plane reportedly carrying 107 passengers has crashed in the Pakistani city of Karachi on a flight from Lahore. Emergency services have arrived on the scene where homes have been damaged. This video footage shows crowds and ambulances near the site of the crash that has come just days after Pakistan began allowing commercial flights to resume. The US President Donald Trump has announced plans to withdraw the United States from the Open Skies Treaty, marking the third time that Trump has pulled out of an arms control pact since coming to office.
Russia didn't adhere to the treaty.
The US administration has said that Russia has repeatedly violated the pact's terms. The Open Skies Treaty enables member nations to make surveillance flights over each other's countries to build trust. Trump's decision could aggravate tensions within the NATO alliance. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has said he will sign off a $10 billion federal aid program for states and cities impacted by coronavirus, but asked governors for support by freezing public sector pay increases. Bolsonaro has been under growing pressure for his handling of the outbreak, which looks set to destroy the Brazilian economy and threatens his re-election hopes. In the coming days, Brazil is likely to become the country with the second most confirmed number of coronavirus cases behind only the United States. A United Nations war crimes prosecutor has confirmed the death of a major suspect in the Rwandan genocide, Augustin Bizimana. Seen here in the top left, the war crimes prosecutor has now confirmed that Bizimana has been dead since the year 2000. He was the Minister of Defense at the time of the 1994 genocide. The announcement follows last weekend's arrest in Paris of Félicien Kabuga, who had also been on the run after being indicted by an international tribunal for Rwanda. Following last week's arrest of Kabuga, the prosecutor says the search is still on for 6 other fugitives who are accused of genocide. 10 ministers in South Sudan are now confirmed to have contracted coronavirus. The information minister says that all former members of the high-level task force on coronavirus, apart from the health minister, have now tested positive for COVID-19. But he has denied reports that President Salva Kiir, who was also a member of the team, had also tested positive. The United Nations has called on Malta to disembark migrants who have been at sea for 2 weeks and on the EU to relocate them. Both Italy and Malta have closed their ports to migrant boats, saying they cannot help them because of the coronavirus crisis, but migrants have continued to arrive despite port closures. The United Nations has recorded an increase of 290% for departures from Libya from January to April due to ongoing conflict and devastating impact of COVID-19. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the city of Kolkata that has been devastated by the most powerful cyclone to strike India in over a decade. Modi has announced emergency aid of $131.6 million to help the state of West Bengal at a time when India is already struggling to deal with the coronavirus outbreak. At least 84 people died when Cyclone Amphan hit eastern India and Bangladesh, yet the toll is expected to rise as communications are restored. Protesters have gathered outside a hospital in the French capital of Paris to support health workers demanding better pay and working conditions. The demonstrators seemingly ignored social distancing guidelines. The rally was summoned by activists over Facebook, and according to their last posts, 3 people were arrested. More rallies to support those detained are expected over the weekend. And finally, with popcorn, palm trees and face masks, the French town Cannes, known for its annual film festival, has organised a drive-in cinema at a beachfront car park. The 51 vehicles allowed to the screening were parked in every other space, and staff wearing face shields scanned barcodes on tickets. The mayor of Cannes said it was the town's way of paying homage to cinema. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
And the main news again. A London court today threw out Nigeria's $1 billion suit against Royal Dutch Shell and ENI oil giants over lack of jurisdiction, but the federal government says the judgment will be appealed. Also today, the Lagos state government began the process of reopening the state's economy with the rollout of a register to open guidelines. And US President Donald Trump today called on places of worship to open right now, categorizing them as essential. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Obani. Good night.